Connecting. Wayne Henry's live.
I think that
What's
it
shaking?
doesn't show that he's live, but you are live.
Amanda is live. Am I live? I don't get notification.
Yeah, you're live. Wayne, you were live.
You were live, now you're not.
I'm not?
How's everybody doing?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm alright. I am alright.
Alright, there we go.
So,
Today,
is Wine Wednesday.
we're actually
Cheers,
drinking wine
everyone. We have
rather
wine in our cups.
rather than white
Cheers.
claw.
Yeah, and we may or may not have dipped into a little bit prior to being on.
She's telling all our secrets.
No secrets? We have no secrets from you. Let's paused. So, how are you, Wayne?
I'm fabulous. How are you all?
Fine.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Fine. We're fine.
Cheers. Cheers, everybody.
That is the motto of the last 24 hours. I'm fine.
Fine. Ooh, that's sweet.
Is it? I've never had it.
Let me see. Drinkable.
Drinkable.
Where'd you get that ice?
From my Yeti.
Oh.
Do you like some? Do you need
You
some?
didn't get
It's
some.
like, do we
you
have
want some?
permission? It's been a while since I've been here, but no, I was here at 9 o'clock last night.
Why?
Because I had to mail a check because I forgot.
Oops.
Yeah.
Well. So,
Anyways.
here we are. Welcome, everyone.
We're
Welcome
talking
into
about
our world.
some
Welcome to
issues
our world.
that are near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, typically we pick a topic based on what's going on in our lives. And, the market's been a rough one this year for buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Not so
agents.
much for sellers, but
Yeah.
agents and buyers. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's stuff that happens. And, I think that maybe if you're not in the real estate world, you don't understand that it's not something that can be controlled or something that can.
And I think that sometimes we overlook that because we think that people might be a little bit more knowledgeable than what they are.
Oh, I know. We talk about that all the
Yeah.
time. I mean,
Like when you have to break it down and explain
Yes.
step by step and
Yeah.
everything that's going on.
we're
Sometimes
so in this world. I mean, obviously, we're 24/7. We've been doing it all a long time. And, we all do a lot of business. And I think that we just get very numb to what the everyday.
Right.
Right.
Like, oh, well, that's inspections. Oh, that's appraisal. And like maybe some people don't even understand what inspections are or what the appraisal entails and who orders the appraisal.
Or when they sign a
what's
contract.
realistic, and like
Yeah.
you get an inspection report that's 40 pages long, and,
Right.
Right.
what's realistic for someone to ask, and
Mhm.
what is normal
it is
to be
scary.
wrong in a
It
house.
is scary. Yeah.
And I think too, there are so many inspectors, so many real estate agents, so many lenders. Everyone runs their business differently. Real estate agents need to be licensed. We need to pass a test in order to get that license, but there's no set standards. Well, of course there are ethics and,
Right.
there's rules and things that we have to follow, but as far as running our business or what we talk to clients about, how the process goes, I mean, it's very different between all of us.
Yes.
So we get very maybe
Well,
numb.
they don't teach you in real estate classes
How to run a business.
how to really be a real estate agent.
Right,
They
right.
teach us principles and practices and those kinds of things. But when it comes down to the day-to-day activities,
Yeah.
I had no
it really
idea
is learning on the
how
job.
to write a contract or how to deal with clients, or I had no idea what any of the job actually entailed. Like I really didn't.
They don't teach you that. They don't teach you what the job actually is or what it entails. And I remember my very first transaction, my very first contract, we were sitting in a Starbucks and I had my team lead on the phone telling me what everything meant because there had been no training, there had been no, and that really, literally, it was like the first week I had started.
And this is one of the many reasons why agents are required to work under a broker, because a broker has to have a certain level of experience and all that good stuff.
Training
Thank
and
God.
Things like
And,
that.
Yeah.
But, in the end, usually you're in good hands with your agent, and if you're with these three, which you should be, then you are definitely. But there are definitely things that can be controlled and things that can't.
Yeah, and so again, getting back to this last year, 2000, and it's far from over yet. But I always feel like we get to that 6 month
I
mark.
think it's
and
over. I was talking about that today. I'm like, I feel like the year's over.
It kind
Well,
of.
it's because summer's coming.
Yeah,
to
because
an end.
summer's coming to an end, and it's
Right,
gonna be
right.
fall, and then
Summer's over, and then
Thanksgiving,
it's gonna be like,
and then
it's
that
gonna be
big
holidays.
Yeah.
I do
Oh,
love
but
the
I'm
fall
afraid.
as my favorite, but
Yeah.
I just wish we could skip from December to like March.
Mm.
Yeah.
I wish we
Maybe
could
May.
skip.
Yeah, because really we don't. I mean, I'm
We
okay
like
with
summer.
a little bit of winter, but by January I'm really over it.
You know, what's bugging me right now is all the people posting on Facebook about how they're ready for sweaters and jeans and bring football.
Yeah.
Like, we had like 5 summer days. What are you even talking about? Like, there was no summer. How are you even ready for
Someone
that
said
yet?
that,
And one of the things we can't control is the
someone
season.
said pumpkin.
Yeah, well, right.
Someone said something about pumpkin spice everything, and I was at Kroger yesterday.
Weird, I just said
Weird.
that yesterday, but it wasn't me she's talking about.
And they had pumpkin that they were putting out.
Oh.
And I was like, oh,
I'm ready for pumpkin.
That one is near.
I am ready for
I like
that.
pumpkin a lot.
I do love like a cider and sitting by a fire at night
Yes.
and you know that little chill in the air
Yes.
and all that stuff.
I
I do
love
love
bonfires,
that. Like, yeah.
Which I'm going camping this weekend.
Oh.
I'm going next weekend.
I'm done.
And we were
When are you
last
going?
weekend.
Oh,
Kind of. We were
Camping-
glamping.
Crampton.
But, yeah.
Well, that's yeah.
Well, now we're trying to like fit summer back into our lives.
Yeah.
I will tell you, Amanda
Summer
really
goes
does
so fast.
hardcore camp. Like, she's in a tent and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way you.
Not like
That's
that.
camping.
We did
No,
that. Well, I
that
did
is
that.
it.
I did that
That's
about
like-
a month ago.
Oh, you
It was
did?
awful.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, why would you? Anyway, okay, so getting back on.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
This is what
Real
happens. Like, you know.
So I think the number one thing that we cannot control is how your inspections come back.
That's one of them
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have no
Or-
idea.
I mean, and a lot of that, sometimes how you feel after the inspection, a lot of that depends on who you have as an inspector, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it does because I always recommend my clients to go to the inspections and to talk to the inspector because if you don't go to your inspection and then you get this 40-page report back and it has these items on there and you're reading through it, it sounds scary.
Right.
But if you're there and talking to the inspector can be like, oh, hey, that's really, really minor. And I
Mhm.
actually had an inspection report come back that had a whole bunch of little minor things. And I have new home buyers, and they were like, oh, these things are just minor, so it's fine.
mhm.
And
Well, it's hard.
it made me feel good about it.
Well,
Like,
if you haven't lived in a house or owned a house where
Right.
you've had to worry about maintenance or
Mhm.
understanding even where the electric panel in the house is, I think it's really hard to grasp when you get that report because they're all long in every house. I mean, if it's 5 years old or 50 years old or older,
right.
the report's always about the same number of pages usually,
Mhm.
you know.
And a lot of the time it has just like standard
Right.
items in
A
it.
lot of it's CYA for the inspectors, but then you get into
Absolutely,
real
right.
issues.
Mhm.
And there are common stuff that comes up, and that's I think where we are used to it. But someone who, especially first
Doesn't
timers,
know, right?
that's scary. You're right; it's very scary.
Mhm.
So, but we can't control that, you know. And we
Right.
also can't control what the seller will agree to fix and
Yeah.
what they can't. I mean, there are so many people involved in this transaction, and not to segue out of the inspection part of it, but I think the biggest thing is we can't control people in the transaction, right? Whether it's from the offer point to the inspection point to the financing,
Mhm.
we have no control here. We are the messenger. We're guiding this little ship along the
Right.
ocean.
The mediators.
Yes,
The
and
negotiators.
mediators,
Timeline
negotiators.
followers.
Yes.
And of course, we're going to
Keeping you
fight
on
and do
trackers.
everything we can, you know, with the inspection and all these things to get the best terms for you, or to even get you the deal, you know.
Yeah.
But we can't control people as much as, man, I would love to, but I can't. Like,
And isn't it interesting how many of us are control freaks?
Yes.
I mean, A number one right here, and
A
you
number
know,
two.
Yeah.
I don't know, am I?
No, you're pretty easy
I
going.
think you are very easygoing. That's why we balance.
Yeah,
Like,
we
all
put her in the
balance.
middle, but
Yeah.
just,
It's whatever.
I don't know. I just, you know, and that segues into another good point. There are so many cogs in the wheel. You know, we can't control if an offer is going to be accepted or not,
Right.
or
Right.
you know,
and that's the beginning of it.
Yeah,
and
that's the
especially
start.
in this market,
Mm-hmm. It's
you know, I hate to say it, but at least 50% of the time, up until recently,
yeah,
you weren't the winner. I mean,
Right.
you've got 4 or
right.
5 people going against you.
Right.
You know, you've got a 20% chance.
right.
there,
And when
know,
you
so-
are the winner, it's super exciting. However, a lot of us have experienced, I know all of us actually have experienced that we aren't the winner. Our buyers aren't, it's not us.
It's the worst
It's
getting
our
that news.
buyers aren't the winner of the contract.
You know, because
buying a home.
you also can't control how many people are going to offer on the house,
Right.
and what
And
the
what
sellers
they're
are
going
going
to
to
offer.
accept and not
Exactly.
accept.
That's with having the unknowns of what the other people are offering, and you don't know what price they offered, you don't know how long their inspection period is, you don't know if it's cash, you don't know what the close date is, you don't know any of that. And so to have a stronger offer than you is obviously pretty, you know, like you said, if there's 5 other offers, like you really just.
Well, there's going to be 4 losers.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
Amanda
tough.
and I were talking earlier, you know, talking about this because, you know, like I said, we sometimes come up with these topics based on what's going on in our lives at the moment. And, you know, I had said $1 Million Listing, that show, you know, HGTV, they make it so unrealistic, looking like an agent controls this aspect, that aspect. The negotiations are very hardcore, and you know, if your seller doesn't take this, my blah blah. That
I will
doesn't
say
happen.
the $1 Million Listing though. There are some instances where I do feel better about my life and my job.
Oh sure.
And to
But-
see that, and I do think there is some reality to those. You know, those people aren't that good of actors. But I do think that there's a lot of dramatization, of course.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
But it's
yeah,
like, you know, things like unrealistic people on either sides of the transaction, right? You know, and that is a common reoccurrence on that $1 Million Listing thing is, you know, there's someone here and there's someone here and they're trying to find some ground where they meet, and
right.
but someone's just not being realistic in it. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in this job, and the biggest thing we can't control is everybody's got their own wants and desires.
Right.
I can't, you can't, no one can control what the other person ultimately wants. And it's trying to, Sean, my partner, who's an attorney, said, a successful compromise means that neither party is 100% happy.
You meet in the middle.
Yeah, and it's not
You
even
have
always
to.
in the middle.
Yeah,
you know, it's,
you
you know, in this
there's a
case,
lot of times
for
that
buyers, you know, it's often not meeting in the
Right.
middle,
No,
right?
it's
You know,
giving
like,
everything
yeah,
and then-
it's giving up
Yeah.
more. In a more balanced market, maybe. So what? Oh.
That's probably in yours too.
Yeah.
We're laughing. Can you show that? Well, they
Well, I
see
don't
that.
know.
Although,
Yeah.
well,
I mean, you can see it actually from if you're watching my video, but
Yeah.
I
Jenny's
can't
camera is Emma's shot, and so are our
Jenny's
two
and
wine
our 2 wine bottles that we were trying to hide.
we were trying to be
unsuccessful.
even though we weren't, because we told y'all we were drinking prior. But you know, I don't know. I mean, what? Like, what else? What else can?
The appraisal.
Oh, huh. So, you know, the thing about appraisal is it's opinion and value for that day.
And so your lender, when you're buying a house, your lender orders the appraisal.
Has no control over who
We
the
have no-
appraiser is.
Yeah.
I had
We
I
don't
had a
know.
seller tell me, because I was on both sides, and it was a VA deal, and so I said, well, there's special circumstances for an appraisal for a VA loan. And he goes, oh, now this is, I gotta watch, you're watching out for your veteran. And I said, no, it really has nothing to do with me. Like, because he thought like, I was, I have to watch out because this guy's a veteran. And
Right.
VA, who's backing the loan, watches out for the veteran.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not
They
part of
have
that.
specific
We never meet the
FHA
appraiser.
and
Like,
VA.
we don't get, I mean, we can meet them.
So
but
I think as a
we can't
listing
influence them.
agent and a seller, you can meet the appraiser. If you are a buyer or a buyer's agent, then you should not be in contact with the appraiser because you can sway their opinion,
Yeah.
is what they say.
Well, and even for sellers and sellers agents, I mean,
I
I've
make
had
it
sellers that are home during the
I have
appraisal, and
too.
I've been there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm there to answer questions if
Yeah.
they have questions, but I'm
Right.
certainly not there to
I don't
influence.
stay the whole
yeah.
time. I just
Oh,
go
no.
and meet the appraiser
And
and
usually
give
it's
them a
quick,
packet.
like it's.
And I have had the seller's home as well. And the appraiser, sometimes there are certain houses that are a little bit unique, and so the appraiser was actually happy that the seller was home. So, oh my
Right.
gosh, now I can ask you questions to help appraise this.
Right.
And so, however, your lender orders the appraisal, and we as agents, sometimes if you are on the buyer side, you don't even know when it is, and you don't even know who it's going to be.
Right.
So we have no idea when it's going to come back at. when it's going to come back.
If there's going to be conditions for repair.
Right. Sometimes the appraiser requires repairs to be made based on the type of loan. So
or if your foundation's crumbling.
I've never had that come.
I had
a crack in the foundation come back once.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I've had it twice. Yeah.
I've never had that.
Old homes are particularly successful.
Yeah.
Of course, the one I was selling. You know, my biggest appraisal discrepancy was one I was selling. The one that came back with a crack in the foundation was mine. I was selling.
I had like a water heater come back that it needed like a different type of tube on it.
Oh, the CSST bonding or something like.
No, it was like.
That comes up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? I've never had that come back on appraisal either.
They say because the 1 in 2 million chance that your house gets struck by lightning, if your water heater's not CSSS tubing or whatever.
Any inspectors watching?
Anyone want to tell us what that is?
Good Lord, like.
However, that comes back on most inspections if it's not up to code, and those are things that we usually have the seller fix prior to appraisal, but.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, the appraisal is definitely one of those things that
Appraisal,
for a
I
long
think,
time it was a really
yeah.
I mean, and even now it depends on the scenario, but you know, for a while before the market really caught up and prices were going up so fast, there were a lot of appraisals coming back with problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the purchase price was too high.
Well,
it just took a while for the market to catch up.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things you guys are so good about pointing out is that, you know, people are so afraid of overpaying for a home right now, but 90 days from now, you're not overpaying. Everything catches up. So
I think it's catching up.
Definitely.
I think we're coming to our.
We had a conversation before, where we were in a CE with, other people, and
yes.
there was a little bit of a disagreement there about, one agent had the perception, that everybody asks him, am I overpaying for this house? He's like, well, of course you're overpaying. Like, it's like, we're at the top of the market, right now, like, of course you're overpaying, but is it in your best interest? Do you want this house? Then that's the price you're going to pay. My point was, okay, you may be overpaying on that day, but you just set the bar for the new comp, right? Like if it appraises there, the next person who sells should sell there, and then you're setting the bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's like houses in my neighborhood have gone up. I mean,
we can't look at value always looking back. I mean, value goes forward.
It would never
change.
change.
Now it's like, oh my gosh, houses have gotten so much more expensive since I bought my house.
Which makes no sense to me, the whole
ago.
appraisal thing. It makes no sense how we do this. Because you're right, if they always appraised for what everything else already sold for, prices would never go up.
Right.
I don't get it, but
it's beyond our purview.
Right.
So
one
trash it. Sorry.
All right, back on topic. Oh my gosh.
So what else can't we control? Or what can we control?
Hey, any real estate agents or lenders watching, chime in, please, because this is.
Let's talk about some things that we can control. I think we can control.
I know we can control sort of the mood of the transaction. I mean, I think it's important.
We can help.
In that, as agents, what I try to take the stress away from my clients, big time.
Which puts a lot on us, but
it does. And, there may be stress with lending, there may be stress with the sellers or buyer, either side of it. Things may tend to get a little heated, but I'm trying to shield my clients from that.
Do you find that this is a little bit like being a parent? I'm not a parent, I'm asking you because you have kids. But it's like, my mom always...
I'm a bad parent. I don't shield my kids from the world.
The whole thing, like where, like you were saying about, my old broker always said, I was getting emotional about a situation years ago that was happening. He said, wait, stop. He goes, our job in this whole thing is to remove emotion from things.
Yeah, and I can't.
It's hard. It is really hard. But I have to say, it's one of the things that has stuck with me. And that I, and it's like being a parent, you don't want bad things for your children, right? So it's like you will take those stresses from your kids you know,
And
to
that's
help
what we
them
do.
through whatever it is.
Well,
right?
and that's,
You know?
yeah, and so that's
And I feel like in this situation, we're doing the same. It's like, okay, we know how to navigate through this. Let me take this stress off your plate.
Sometimes a seller may not know that the buyer's lending is in question
It's about to
the
collapse.
last few days of the transaction. And it gets to be a very minute by minute,
And it's like,
very
at what
tense
point
thing.
can you?
So
what
at what
do
point
you,
do you tell them? And you know, there's a balance, and I tend to, if you're working with me, I'm very warm fuzzy, very, you know, happy go lucky. Let's, you know, this is wonderful, yada yada yada. But to the other agent, and once something goes wrong, the bulldog comes out. You know, and my clients won't see that necessarily.
I've seen Jenny's bulldog.
Yeah.
I try to shield and sometimes I even call Jenny. I'm like, hey, should I tell my clients this? Should I not tell my clients this? Because there's so much that you should tell somebody, because it gets really scary. For instance, I had a house for sale, and I was told about 2 hours before closing that the buyers weren't going to go to the closing. And I did not tell my clients. And
well, because some
those
of
are the moments you sit in the room for an hour and you're like, what do I do?
I couldn't even go running. I couldn't do anything. Like I just took on all of the stress.
Because there's a balance. We're all humans. We're all in that position where we get scared, or so, you know, it is like,
That is sweet.
what do you, I don't know. I mean, and it's not withholding information, because at some point you will, but at what point do you worry your client? At what point do you stress your client?
I think it's only at the point where it's now fact rather than speculation.
Right, because so much is speculation over the 30,
we don't have
45
a
days.
definitive answer at that point, and there's a point at which the client can make a decision about what they're going to do, you know. And when it's only speculation and things aren't, you know, what?
Nothing.
Oh.
I don't know, I thought you were pointing to something.
I wasn't pointing to anything.
But like when the client can physically make a decision that's going to make a difference in the transaction, I think is at what point we physically have to have a talk. And sometimes things are on the horizon. We don't know, and again, it goes back to what we can't control. It's like, I'd love to go talk to that underwriter and tell them, oh, everything's going to be fine, Mr. Underwriter, Mrs.
Over
Underwriter.
the underwriters.
We don't even get to talk to the underwriters.
No.
Oh, I
you know,
want
and that
We don't like underwriters.
circle.
Well, and the thing is
So if
about
you're watching
underwriters.
and you're an underwriter,
yeah,
we don't
unfriendly.
like you.
No, I'm just kidding.
I like you.
Look, no.
I love your underwriters. They won't,
Oh wait, hopefully they won't see this, but no, and I think they understand the adversarial role. Their job is to defend the lender's asset.
You know what? But here's the thing: you want them to be hardcore, and you want them to
I
be
just
doing
wish
that
they were
job, and you
hardcore
want them
on a better time frame instead of waiting
I
until
mean, that
48 hours
depends on the
before
lender.
closing to bring up a major issue.
I think
But they should have found out weeks before. You hear
I
me?
have that
You
going
hear
on
me?
now too.
that happens.
Yeah.
I have all this stuff going on.
And I understand the challenges, and that, you know, everybody's busy, and, you know, this is on a first come first served probably basis. But the problem becomes, and this comes to something else, we can't always control when stuff happens.
Okay, so yes, we cannot control when the pause in the market hits. So, you know,
When the underwriter asks 2 days before closing, that throws the whole thing off. Like,
there's something.
yeah.
What can't with that?
What was I supposed to do?
I don't know. I said something. Wade said something. You said something.
I said a lot of things.
I know you.
They're fighting again.
No.
I'm just kidding.
We should have said each other.
I'm kidding.
Sorry.
They're BFF sisters. Like,
Truly. Now we lost our train of thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
we were talking about
Because
timing. We
because
can't
because
control
you're-
when it
Oh,
happens.
timing.
And
Yeah, timing is a big factor.
And
Yeah.
I mean, we can usher things along, and I think that is probably one of the biggest
I think
roles
that's
of
our
an agent
job.
is to make sure.
Right. To timelines. We make sure that you follow your timeline.
Well, that and the other side is staying on top of it. You know, it's like loan commitments coming due. the the inspection. It's like I don't tip off the buyer if you haven't got back to me and it's the 9th day and you still haven't scheduled your
Right.
inspection. That's
Yeah,
your
we
problem, and I'm on the
follow
other
up.
side.
Well,
of
you
it.
should have your agent be following that. I mean, and that's the point of.
But if I'm on the other side and you miss your inspection deadline, that's better for my client. So
Yeah.
and that's happened.
And then do you still do the repairs?
Well, okay, in the voice of, someone that we just spoke about earlier, another agent that we went to a CE, he said, just because you miss a deadline, or just because this or that happens, usually both sides still want this thing to close.
Yeah.
So while maybe they missed the deadline and now they're no longer obligated, or it was sold as is, he said, just because that is the scenario, doesn't mean that
that's what's gonna
that's what
happen.
has to happen, because
Well,
they still want to close, and if they want to
really
close,
great examples.
Yeah.
And I think that that goes back into another aspect we can control as agents, which is the tone of the transaction. So if the other agent and their clients come at myself and
Come at
my
me, bro.
clients, in a manner that is unappealing or aggressive, or in a manner that is not going to be in the best interest of my clients, whichever side that might be on, I may not be as open to, like there's a timeline in place. The
my
thing of
goal
it is,
in all of this is to get us to the
Right.
closing table.
And then again,
Yes,
that's where we
but-
come in, that we're all different agents, and we
but
run our business differently.
there are timelines in place. The transaction is, the contract is a living being entity, and it is a legal
Right.
binding contract
And then
that
again,
needs to be followed.
It's not up to us, it's up to our buyers.
our
and sellers.
contract.
We do not make,
our clients. Yes.
right, we do not make any decisions. Like if somebody were
And I
to
think
submit
that's
a
the
request
biggest
for
misnomer.
remedy.
It's like that's not what you just said is nail on the head. Is we don't make decisions.
Right.
Ever.
I let you make the decision. However, people want me to make the decisions, but
Yeah.
I can't
You can't.
legally.
Yeah.
Like I can't, I wish that I could.
I can arm you with information. I can guide you emotionally. I can be an ear to listen to. But in the end, and when people sign the paper or
Yes,
whatever, and
yeah.
you send them the 13-page contract, and 15 seconds later they've already signed it in dot loop, and they didn't read past the first sentence, and they say, "I
They
trust
don't read
you."
anything.
Yeah.
They say, "I trust." No. You might trust me, and I appreciate that. I really, really do. However, you're the one signing, and you're the one on the hook, not me. So
Right.
mistakes happen. You need to read through the contract. You also need to understand what's in the contract.
I'll say I don't tell that to my clients.
Yeah. Well,
I let them do what they want.
and look, I mean, I've had people after they sign, or even after closing, they show up at the house and the curtains are gone. Okay, well, did you see section whatever in the contract? Curtains don't stay. So it's like
or you say you should have let me know that you wanted the curtains to stay.
right. And I can't literally go through every item in the house and say, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this?
Well, I just let people
And-
know what's standard. Like
Right.
I say, hey, the
Well,
washer
and
dryer
that's what's
are
listed in the
standard.
contract.
Right, but again,
they read that.
we hold hands
Yes.
in this business, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah.
That's what I try to do.
Well, and that's why I think the biggest difference now the biggest change and not the best change is that now that everything is electronic, we've lost the face-to-face interaction and explanation of what's in there. I think it used to be when you sat down at a table and someone was signing things, you would go through all of it and not advise legally, but at least explain what the stuff means that they're signing. We don't do that really anymore.
I do that. I try to go over the contract with people that are
And I
with
haven't had.
first-time home buyers.
I can maybe think of 2 or 3 instances in the last 12 years, or how many years it's been, 11, that there's been an issue, and both times, I'm not saying that I wasn't somewhat to blame, but it was carelessness on the buyer's part. I think, but
Nothing's there.
I will say that I find younger generations to be much more savvy at reading through the
I
contract.
think because they've been conditioned in a legal environment that everything's litigious.
Well, and because it is.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy working, I always think well, I always laugh, the millennial generation. I always think that, I find that term to be kind of flipped now. I think that
What am I? I don't remember what I am.
Zennial or
Yeah.
something,
But
whatever.
I'm not
You're not a
technically.
millennial?
I'm technically.
She is,
I'm
but
technically
she-
a millennial.
But she's like in between. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But
Another vitamin.
I enjoy
What does
working
it mean, though?
with
I do
younger
too.
first-time home buyer and the younger generation
They're
because they're
genuinely interested
actually
in learning.
yeah, and they do read and they are concerned for.
I think the analogy I'll use here
Mhm.
is as a musician, I grew up playing trumpet, learned how to play the trumpet, right? But now I would love to be able to play the piano, but I really just want to sit down and play. I don't want to take the time to learn.
Right.
And I know enough about music, right? I think it's the same thing in a real estate transaction.
Yeah.
They've been through it once, they think they know a lot, but things have changed and they don't really know. And I think that's my generation,
Yeah.
older generation. I mean, the older generation's I think pretty good about slowing. It's really the Xers that I
Oh,
find.
we're horrible.
Yeah.
So I will say my one of my favorite lender partners, Shanti McConnell, just said, as a lender, I go through everything in detail. I also review parts of the contract I think they may be confused with. Shanti's really good about having clients come in to the office, and I don't know. I mean, sometimes
You lose if you don't at least at some point meet your lender face to face, or you're gonna meet your real estate agent, but I hope.
Sometimes.
yeah.
Well,
And
I mean, there
also
are
links
instances
showing.
that agents, these MLS only contracts and stuff. I'm sure they never met them.
Well, I had a client I was working with who lived in California. Who
Well,
was
I
writing
had
offers
that
on investment properties,
I've had that too.
Yeah, so anyway,
But
being.
but you're losing something in translation, or at least not to just have a lengthy conversation on the phone about what you're doing.
I think it's important to meet face to face. We can control that. We can control if we're going to meet face to face or not. Well,
If
we
the
can
other
set an
person's
appointment if
open
the
to
other
it.
person doesn't show up. That's we can't control that. So
Yeah. So,
anyway,
but I think in the end, there's very little we can control, and I think that's what this boils down to. But I think there's a perception that if things don't go your way, or our way, whatever, that
yeah,
some reason someone didn't do what they were supposed to, or you didn't do your job, and that is but that is a frequent.
understandable. Understandable.
Because-
Looking at it from our side, however, if that is your feeling with your
Be honest and
agent
talk about
or
it.
lender, let them know. They won't be offended.
We're all adults.
Yeah, I mean, if I think it's most important to talk and talk through things. It's probably the biggest investment you will make in your lifetime.
Open and honest communication.
Yeah. So if you have issue with something, just talk about it. And if you have questions regarding things that are happening, ask about it.
Yeah, I always say, what questions do you have? What questions do you have?
Mhm.
I can't read your mind.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but it's usually you get a sense, right, that something when you're talking with someone or something's going along, usually something along the line triggers this emotion in your brain that something isn't. That person's thinking something that they're not quite being honest about or being open about, or that they want to say and they're not saying it. And it's I think listening to those cues during the course of life, and this isn't even just in real estate, in your personal and your professional relationships, listen to your instincts, and if someone's not being open with you, and for us, it's really hard, but we've got to coax it out of people sometimes. Because I think we're in this make everybody feel good, no one can be offended kind of environment these days. It's just, it's society, and in many respects, there's nothing wrong with that. However, there are times where we are not honest with each other because we're afraid to upset someone.
Yeah.
Right.
However, if people are behind a keyboard and anonymous on Facebook,
That is
they'll
not
put
acceptable.
all of it out there.
Well, and that's not acceptable.
That's a completely different
But-
conversation.
But so anyway.
Be that way.
I mean, we should go out.
Now?
Pins, anyone?
We gotta go. We're going to Pins.
We out.
Pins, Dublin,
Pins,
meet
4
us there.
o'clock. Anyone? Anyone?
All right.
Who wants to meet us there?
So, all right, we've killed this.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, we're
Cheers,
really
y'all.
done. We could probably talk about real estate all day long.
We could.
Yeah,
We usually
we
do.
could.
But,
We actually really could.
all right. Bye.
I
y'all.
got it. I got it. I got it.